Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about Lifetime's Life After Lockup with Gypsy Rose, episode 6. I'm a little bit late, but here we are, so let's get into it. Hey, hey, can you purr for the people? No? Okay. Okay, so let's get into it. So episode 6 starts off with Ken being interviewed, and he's like really shaky. I noticed sipping on something awkwardly, like there's a dog, his dog's running around in the background. But he's doing this interview, and they ask him why he initially wrote to Gypsy while she was in prison, and he says he was 24 at the time. He doesn't really remember what he was thinking, but he does know that he just wanted to let her know that there is support out here for her. And then from there, they continue talking. And Ken says that they would actually have 4 to 5 hour phone conversations, which is surprising to me with her being in prison. And that she has a way of calming him when his mind gets racing. So that's one of the reasons why he loves Gypsy. Then we have the scene where Gypsy is out on the balcony on her phone with Mia, and she's like, Mia, did you get the video I sent? And I'm guessing it's the video of Ryan freaking out after their little fight there. And Mia's like, no, I didn't watch it yet. And then she's like, but we'll text about it later. And then she hangs up, she goes in the house where Ryan is, and then Ryan's questioning who she's on the phone with, and she says, it was Mia. And he's like, did you tell her about our argument? And she was like, yep, I did. And he's saying, well, you didn't have to do that. The argument wasn't, that serious. And he's understandably upset about that. I feel like in a relationship, you shouldn't always run and tell other people what's going on. That's just my personal opinion. So I can kind of side with Ryan there. But at the same time, I could see why maybe Gypsy wanted somebody to vent to, but people have different opinions on that, so we'll leave that there. Next, we have Rod talking about the fact that he's sort of jealous and he feels like he hasn't gotten time alone with Gypsy. And Kristy just keeps butting in, and Rod's like, I'm trying to talk, but you won't let me. And I thought that was pretty funny, but I feel like that's really a kind of picture of how their relationship is. I think Kristy really overshadows him and kind of controls everything from what I'm seeing. But Rod's like, yeah, I haven't really had that time with Gypsy, and we haven't been able to work on building our relationship, our father daughter relationship. And Kristy's like, well, you need to tell her. And Rod's like, well, I will, but I don't want to come off as controlling like her mother or anybody else, because Gypsy has that scar, I guess, of being controlled. And so Kristy's like, well, no, you're not like that. And, we're going to tell Gypsy that you want that alone time with her. We're going to make it happen. And then it moves to a scene with Ryan and Gypsy going to some bounce house thing. And Gypsy does like this big spiel on why she loves Ryan and how much she wants to make their relationship work. And she says, love is always worth fighting for. After Gypsy and Ryan roll around in the play area and have their fun, they go to get something to eat. And Gypsy's like, are you still mad at me for texting Mia? And Ryan's like, well, yeah, sort of. And then she asks why. And then this leads into a whole other conversation about Gypsy's family and how Ryan makes snarky comments. Ryan says that he's a prideful person and he's trying to stand up for their relationship. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's emotional. And sometimes he makes these comments, but he's joking. And then Gypsy brings up her past, like we know her to do. And she says, when I was 13, I did the same thing and my mom hated it. I would make remarks, and when it would offend her, I would say, "Oh, I was just joking." And she's saying like that's what Ryan does. And he admits that sometimes he does that, and then he says, "Okay, I'll stop." And then Gypsy's like, we'll see. We'll see if you'll stop. She's like, I know Ryan, and we're just gonna have to see if these changes are made. You know, in this episode, we hear a lot about Gypsy's looks. This is kind of like where she goes and makes the changes to her hair, her teeth. I don't like to talk too much about looks in my videos. I don't think that should be the main focus on anybody, no matter what type of person they are. I feel like talking about somebody's looks all the time is like the lowest you can go, and it's just you're not proving any points, you're not getting anywhere, if you know what I'm saying. But I will say that she mentions how she was never allowed to be worried about her looks. So now she's making these changes. But I think the bigger thing that she says is that she's changing her looks to disassociate herself from her past, which I'm going to say you can change up your looks all you want, but it doesn't change what's in here and in here. The truth is that she will forever be known for what she is known for. And that's the thing, no matter what she does, changing her looks, she can't disassociate from that. That's never going away. Kristy in one scene arrives to visit with Gypsy, and they have like their dogs together and stuff, and Ryan is in the bedroom. He's sick. Apparently, he has pneumonia. And this is after all of those first pregnancy rumors came about where people were saying Gypsy was pregnant with Ryan's baby at the beginning. And they were in the hospital because Ryan was getting a chest x-ray. So somebody came up with this narrative that Gypsy was pregnant. They were talking a little bit about that. But really, Ryan was just sick with pneumonia. That scene was a little bit awkward when Ryan stayed in the bedroom. It's like, was it really because he was sick or was it something else? I'm not really sure there, but I will say Kristy did say, "Oh, yeah, he needs to stay in the bedroom, especially if he's sick." Something along those lines. So, I mean, it was a little bit awkward, but I could understand, I suppose. After that, Kristy and Gypsy leave with the dogs and they take them for a walk, and they're talking about how Rod wants that one-on-one time with Gypsy without Ryan around. Kristy brings up that whole situation, and Gypsy is like, why wouldn't he just come to me and ask me himself? And she's like, he doesn't want to be controlling like your mother. He doesn't want to come off that way. And Gypsy's like, oh, he never would. And he needs to learn how to be my dad. Then there is another scene where Gypsy is in her consultation to get her nose job, and she had Mia and Kristy tag along. Apparently, Mia wants to get a nose job in the future as well because I guess they both got their dad's genetics. So then Mia asked Gypsy, does this surgery scare you because of all the surgeries that you've had before? And Gypsy says, no, because she's choosing this surgery and it's not taking something away from her, it's giving her something. All of those surgeries, there weren't that many surgeries. We've already debunked that. But anyway, following that, we have Kristy and Gypsy at a restaurant, and Gypsy tells Kristy that she woke up Ryan while he was sleeping and said she missed Ken. Not only was it just out of the blue, it was also the day before Valentine's Day. And I'm like, how messed up is that? You wake up your husband to tell him that you miss your ex. I want to know what you guys would do in that situation if your significant other woke you up to tell you that they miss their ex. What would you do? Would you just say, oh, just let it go? Or would you have said or done something more? Gypsy continues to talk about how she is confused and she has two men in her heart, Ryan and Ken, and how 2 weeks before Ryan and Gypsy got married, she did talk to Ken and he never told her to wait for him. Kristy's face during this whole conversation, you can tell that she's just loving it. She's like living for this love triangle and this drama. I can just see it written all over her face. But then Kristy talks about how she didn't want Gypsy and Ryan to get married right off. She felt like they were moving too fast because Gypsy didn't have the chance to get out and live at first. They didn't really know each other. So I would have to agree there. I feel like getting married while you're in prison is a huge mistake because as we have seen, they didn't truly know each other, just like she doesn't truly know Ken. But I guess we'll just have to see how all of this continues to play out. But I would have to agree with that about the whole waiting on marriage, especially if you're locked up in prison and you haven't gotten to know somebody on a very personal live-in situation. You haven't even really dated. So I do agree with that. It really just makes me wonder now, like, what does Kristy and Rod think about Gypsy being pregnant? Then we get to go back to Kenny Boy in his interview, and he is talking about how people were in his ear telling him that he was hindering Gypsy's growth and development, and that's why he cut ties with her. But then he mentions that Gypsy was codependent on the relationship, so he knew that she would probably go from him to somebody else. He didn't think things would get that far, but he did say that he never supported any of her other relationships. Then the interviewer asks, so let's clear things up. Let's set the record straight. Are you talking to Gypsy right now? And he says, no. Meaning, like, right now, like in this moment, I'm guessing that's how he answered, because in the same interview, he said that the last time he spoke to Gypsy was right before her release from prison. So they've had this going on. They've had this connection and a way of communicating still. You cannot tell me otherwise. And then we already knew that he obviously talked to her before Ryan and her got married. So yeah, it came out that he did speak to her right before her release, and that's messed up. Ryan put everything aside to go pick her up during her release, and at the same time, she was talking to him. How messed up is that? Then we go back to Gypsy's looks, and she's getting her hair done, and Ryan's like, "Whoa, you're making a lot of changes. Are you even going to be my wife anymore? Is this going to change you?" He thinks that her changing her looks is going to change her as a person, or like what she wants. Then Gypsy goes on to this whole thing where she's in a phase of analyzing her life and can unlock something in her soul, and that when she was with Ken, she was open mind, open heart. So then she goes on to call Ryan literally a rebound, and she says she went into the relationship with Ryan already mistrusting of relationships or something along those lines, which I thought was funny because she's the one that can't be trusted, as we have all found out. So basically, she loved Ryan, but Ken was just something oh so special. When Gypsy gets her hair done and she comes home, Ryan says, it looks great. It is a big change though. And they're talking, and he asked Gypsy if he's the first one that gets to see her hair. And she goes, well, I sent some pictures to my dad and Kristy, and Ryan's like, oh, I didn't get to be the first person to see it. And she's like, well, you did in person. Like, you're the first person in person to see my hair. And then he says, did your boyfriend like it? So this is one of those backhanded comments that he does, and then he turns it into a joke, but he's being serious because he knew that something else was going on. You can see from all of these episodes that something else is going on, and I notice that in almost every single conversation that she has with Ryan, her phone is right in her hands. Like, she never gives him her undivided attention. She's always on that dang phone, which makes me think of those god awful text messages with Nick back in the day. She must have always had her phone on her because those text messages were around the clock, which makes me feel like she didn't really have to hide that from her mom, because how would she always hide that from her mother? I'm not understanding that. But anyway, back to this episode. So Ryan knew, I think that he felt it in his gut that something was going on. And having to always hear about Ken, and she literally woke the man up in his sleep and told him that she missed Ken. So how do you not expect Ryan not to make these comments and have this mindset? She said that Ken liked blonde hair. So why would Ryan not feel this way? She can bring up Ken, but he can never bring up Ken. And I'm not standing up for Ryan. I'm just saying I could see why he would have these insecurities on top of other insecurities he may have already had. Who knows what type of relationships he had in the past or what he's been through. So I kind of thought that was funny when he was like, did your boyfriend like it? And she didn't say yes or no. She just kind of made some facial expressions. Next, we have Ryan talking about how he wasn't invited to cut off with Gypsy and her family, and that Rod just wanted that alone time with Gypsy, so she went. And Ryan says that he's really trying not to be controlling. And then we have like this sort of wholesome scene where Rod finally gets time with Gypsy alone. He takes her out on the boat to go catch crabs, and then he shows her his guitar, tells her that he's the one that named her after Guns N' Roses, and then he's even teaching her how to ride a bike because she never got that growing up. So I thought that was a really nice scene, and I think it's important that they do continue to work on their relationship, obviously. Then they have a conversation about Gypsy's social media and how she is talking about taking her public accounts down, which didn't last very long. But anyway, he tells her, she says she doesn't like the word famous, and he says, I don't like that word either, and I don't want you to be famous for offing your mother. Rod says that he is proud of Gypsy for recognizing that she doesn't need those public social media accounts and that she took them down. He said that he's proud of her for that. And then later on, when it's dinner time, Ryan calls Gypsy, or Gypsy calls Ryan, whatever. They FaceTime each other. Ryan's like, hey, can you FaceTime me? And Gypsy's like, not right now, honey. And Ryan questions her and says, why is somebody else there that you don't want me to see? And that ends the conversation right there because Gypsy's like, well, I gotta go eat dinner now. And he's like, okay, bye. So that kind of ended on a bad note there. And then Gypsy says, sometimes it's actually really nice when he's not around. So is that foreshadowing something, Lifetime? We already know what happens, but I just find that kind of funny. And yeah, that's it for episode 6. I think that's everything I had in my notes. So let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I know this is a little bit late, but please let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. And I'll be back with another video very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.